Welcome to Mainland Television News, your local regional television station, coming to you from the Nelson and Tasman region. In this week's news roundup, house values rise again in Nelson and Tasman, New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters visits Nelson, and excitement as new Kmart store opens in Richmond. With the release of the latest figures from Quotable Value comes more good news for Nelson and Tasman homeowners. The average current value of homes in Tasman has risen further, with homes now 4.8% higher in value than they were 1 year ago. Nelson values have climbed in October this year, compared with October 2012, by 3.7%. The latest QV Residential Price Movement report shows the average current value of homes in Tasman was $412,000 in October this year. Meanwhile, Nelson homes were valued at $397,000. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters paid a short visit to Nelson, arriving Thursday night, and on Friday morning I caught up with him in the Mainland studio. Today in the studio we are privileged to have New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters. Welcome, Winston.
Thank you very much.
Now, last night you spoke at NMIT here in Nelson to the Nelson branch of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs. The topic of your speech was big global challenges. How are we faring and what else should we be doing?
Well, we're faring better than some countries, but not faring better than some countries if you have regard to our history. When we say we are doing better than, say, the UK or Germany, well, the reality is for decades, when I was younger, and I mean many, many decades, one after the other, we outperformed all those countries, in fact, the whole world, to become number one or number two in the world. And the measurement back then was earnings per person in a country. And we were up at number one and number two all those years. So, no, we're not faring historically nearly as well as we should be. And to compare ourselves with what I called pretty miserable economies is not good enough. There are some big global challenges, and we are not so well prepared for them, contrary to what a lot of people say. We've got too much debt, far too much personal debt, and if you compare our exports per person, say with Singapore, Taiwan, Ireland or Norway, whereas once we used to massively outperform them, today we are failing against those sorts of comparisons. So the message is we could be doing far better. And I came to Nelson to say, look, the global financial crisis is not over. The debt crisis and the political crisis in the United States is not over as well. There are some very disquieting things happening in our near neighbourhood, in Melanesia, places like Fiji, and also parts of Asia. And then, of course, you got the overlay of the rise of China, growing sort of competition with the United States, and the United States, for the first time, beginning to look like it doesn't want to show the leadership it should show. Otherwise, you would never let the Syrian government get away with the use of weapons of mass destruction, which they did. And it's almost as though we're going to let these criminals get away with it.
Now, one of New Zealand First's policies is to reduce tape in New Zealand, red tape, and so businesses are internationally competitive. This is particularly important to an area like Nelson, which is export-based. Do you feel enough is being done by the government to reduce barriers to conducting business on a global and local scale?
Well, yeah, but the barriers I'm talking about aren't the barriers they're talking about. You see, what this government keeps on saying is, on any international measure, we're one of the easiest countries in the world to do business with. Now, what that really means, the shorthand for that is, we're one of the easiest countries in the world to rip off. I mean that seriously. Where else can I just walk in and buy farmland, buy factories, buy a dairy factory, buy, for example, Sinlay, a major South Island manufacturing outlet? If they mean that's something to be commended, that internationally people can do business with us much easier than anywhere else, then I think they've missed the boat completely. I want to know how are medium and small businesses in Nelson doing business, and the red tape is huge. The delays are great. Their cost is all passed on by the central government to council to approve the process, and then the council loads up the cost. Now, I'm not saying that Nelson city council, the two unitary councils here, the two councils here rather, ripping anybody off. But I'm saying right across the country, the cost of application processes is far, far too much. And then on top of that, if you go to build a factory, look at the price of building one compared to, say, to Australia.
We've got a lot of businesses that are opening in Nelson, which is fantastic news, and in Tasman, but we also have a lot of businesses that are closing, a lot of medium and small sized businesses who are really struggling. What do you say to those businesses?
Well, they're the ones that are right up against it, and they're the ones that are not experiencing the so-called brighter future, quite the converse. And those are the businesses that employ the great bulk of New Zealanders. So I think they're getting a terribly hard time, and the government should have made some serious steps to ease their life. And number one way of easing it is to reduce their taxation.
A study of health outcomes for Mapua residents near a formerly contaminated site in Mapua has found no evidence that remediation work led to exposure of levels of dioxins or other toxic chemicals that pose a significant health risk. Study Principal Investigator Associate Professor David McBride says the study did, however, strongly suggest there were significant social health effects to the remediation process. The former Fruit Growers Chemical Company site had been classified as our country's most contaminated, and soil remediation at the site began in 2004 and was completed in 2008. Previous testing has indicated that dioxins were released into the environment during remediation work, although risk to the public would be low. The latest study comparing health outcomes for Mapua residents with counterparts in Tahuna involved a survey and blood testing of some residents, particularly those closest to the clean-up. Blood samples were analysed to measure exposures to dioxins, non-dioxin-like PCBs and organochloride pesticides. No evidence was found of elevated exposures of physical health in Mapua linked to the remediation process, but that it had significant social health effects, which relates to psychosocial processes impacting health. Dr. McBride says the results demonstrate that any perceived risks of chemical hazards are multidimensional and extend to psychosocial health and well-being.
Now, one of your policies too is to investigate the performance of the inter-islander ferries. Aratiri has been beset with problems. You say it's a ferry disaster waiting to happen, with a propeller falling off and things like that. I mean, it's not good enough, is it?
Well, 2 years ago, we said that this Aratiri ferry remodelling, where they took it up to Singapore, added 30 metres on it and brought it back here, was going to be a disaster. We said it consistently, and no one takes pride in saying I told you so, but I darn well did. And what happened was, back comes this ferry. They've had disaster after disaster. It is now flexing through the water, what you might call, look at that scene behind me, porpoising through the water, because instead of being rigid, as a boat's got to be, it's actually buckling in a way and twisting. And it's twisting in a number of ways, which is making it difficult sometimes when they're actually getting into the port, because what you think is the dimensions of the boat is slightly out of shape at certain times. They have had every sort of problem. Ballast problems, which are causing delays. Toilets don't work half the time. The radar, the stabilizer's not working in some cases. And the other night, in the typical sea environment we mentioned at the time we made those warnings, it happened. The shaft gets broken. Now, what does that suggest? It suggests that the shaft may not be on stable groundings or not being held straight. And then a propeller fell off. Now, this is actually staggering news. And what did they say? No one was at risk. Well, if one propeller could fall off because of the boat's engineering faults, why could not two have? And then you'd had everybody on the boat immobile, out on the sea, and in a stormy night, what was the capacity to save people then? And I think they've taken an absolutely cavalier attitude. Worse still, they say, well, we're going to have an inquiry, it could take a year. Why would it take a year? This is a major bridge service, and the lack of a bridge, that is our bridge between the South Island and North Island, that we critically need. I want to know what the answers are now, but more importantly, I want to know who were the turkeys and clowns that had this great idea, because they were told not to do it. They were told by experts, this will not work. No, you got these bean counters who wouldn't know one end of the boat from the other, running New Zealand, the rail operation, the ferry operation. And here comes a disaster. They've got everything possible that could possibly go wrong, has gone wrong. And the cost is not, as the Prime Minister says, $40 million. He got up in the House the other day, he had no idea what he was talking about. It was $52 million to stretch the boat. The cost now is $132 million and rising. This is an absolute lemon, and more people who know something about this industry and know something about maritime affairs and boat building saying it'll never work. I want to know, how come you go and fire all the railway workers at East Side Workshop, who are very valuable workers in Dunedin and all over the country, and yet these people at the top, no one's head rolls when they make mistakes. But this is a massive mistake. What's going to happen? What do they say? Oh, we think we'll keep the passengers off, we'll just run cargo on one motor. Oh, really? So if that motor goes down, now it's totally powerless, and all the crew are at risk. You see what I mean? I kind of think that a Minister of Transport or a Prime Minister should be doing what they did in the old days, get the head of the guy in and the head team of railways and the Cook Strait ferries into the office and ask him, what on earth is going on? But it's a failure to act. And you know what we're told in Parliament? I know it's a long answer I'm giving you, but it's a long story. And you know what you're told? Oh, this is an operational matter. We don't involve ourselves in operational matters. Already? Where life and death could be what's at result, you better involve yourself in operational matters, because you clearly have the responsibility to choose the right team to run railways, and you haven't chosen the right team. That's why you're responsible.
World of Wearable Art has secured major events funding to go international. Nelson MP Nick Smith says he's delighted the Nelson-based World of Wearable Art has gained $900,000 in government funding to propel itself onto the international stage. Nick Smith says this grant will give WOW the wings to go worldwide. He says it will pay dividends with increased international entries in the WOW competition and increased visitors to Nelson's WOW Museum. Excitement for the region this week with the opening of new Australasian-owned Kmart store, with dignitaries Tasman's Deputy Mayor Tim King and MP for Nelson Nick Smith speaking at the 7:30am store opening in Richmond. Mainland's Chrissy Small was there to catch the action and also managed to catch the new store manager, Cameron Holmes, for an interview.
It looks like an outstanding store, and just a brief look inside, it looks great in there. It looks a lot bigger inside than it does outside, which is amazing actually. I've lived here all my life. This site's been through a lot of different uses. When I was a little fella, it was Wilkes's timber store. At that stage, the Wilkes family was a key family in the development of Richmond. Not only did they own that store, they were involved in a lot of other development in this area. And so it's great to see the Gibbons family take on the site and give us this latest incarnation of the use.
To be here, can I acknowledge all the Kmart team, particularly those from Australia who are choosing to invest in our country. I want to acknowledge Roger and Scott Gibbons for the investment that you have and the confidence that you have in this community, and all the team that have been involved in putting such a complex together. I want to just give a bit of a flavour of this project in the broader picture. I was a bit excited yesterday. Latest unemployment figures came out. Not only had New Zealand's unemployment dropped, but Nelson's regional unemployment was the lowest of anywhere in New Zealand, and that is good news for our region. That comes on top of figures last month that showed that Nelson's population growth was only a little tiny snippet behind Auckland over the period of the census of the last 7 years, which, Tim, is a real message about the level of confidence that there is in the Nelson region, reinforced by the opening of this new store. In my view, if we can enhance our region and create jobs, that's absolutely core to the well-being of the community. This project is generating 90 new jobs, and for a community of Nelson's size, that is absolutely huge. Last point I want to make, fantastic building, Kmart's a great brand, but actually, stores come down to people. It comes down to the dedication, the smile, the service that you get. And I've had some stunning reports from individuals about the training that's gone into the fantastic team that you've put here together. Best of luck to the Nelson or Richmond Kmart team with your challenge ahead of making this store a big success. in my view, this is a very important shot in the arm for the Nelson economy and for all the families that have been part of making the store great. Let the shopping begin. Thank you.
That little boy's been waiting all this time. I'm going to cut my ribbon.
Cameron, new store manager, new store. This must be an exciting time.
Absolutely exciting, unforgettable moment. Been in tears, the works, but to have this happen at this point in my life is just absolutely fantastic.
Now, Cameron, where have you moved from to be here in Richmond now?
Okay, so I've moved from Auckland. I've been in Auckland for the past 6.5 years and yeah, loving it. Been such a welcoming community. They've just been fantastic towards me.
Have you been with Kmart the whole time?
I've been with Kmart for 2.5 years now, and I started as an apparel manager, and I've come through from being an apparel manager to, for the past year, relieving store managers in the different stores in Auckland, and yeah, so I've been one of the lucky ones to get this store.
Now, is this a shop with a difference?
Absolute difference. We've got all new innovations. We've got basically the best layouts possible. It's all customer friendly. That's really pushing our lower price for customers to actually see what we're providing for them, and it's shopper friendly. That's the main thing.
And what about, there's been some concern from local retailers about the effect that will have on them. In other past store experiences, do you think that will have much of an effect on local sales here?
A positive effect, and that's what I would say, because with us, we're bringing customers into the community. We're bringing more customers to actually go out and shop in those stores as well. So I don't think they have anything to fear for. We are here to stay, and we are here to help them along in their businesses as well.
You've got a big team here. It looks like they're all very enthusiastic. How long have they been in training?
Well, we started recruitment in August, and since then they've been doing the whole training. They've done induction, they're training through in-store as well as out of the store. So I'd feel very, very proud at this point in time to say that they are well ready to service the customers. They are definitely on the move. We've already had a promotion in the store, so you can see by just the training that they've been given, it's what they're doing with their training that's taking them forward. And we've actually made a commitment to them as well, and in their careers. So they're not just joining Kmart and that's it. They're joining Kmart to go forward from here. There were some people that were unemployed, and for them to now be with us, it's a proud moment for them as well, because I've made my commitment to not just the community, but for them that's in the community that's joined us at Kmart. And like I said, we've already had a promotion in our midst. So somebody's been promoted to a management role that just started with us 3 months ago.
The cause of a high-impact crash on the coastal highway on Tuesday afternoon is being investigated by police. The accident happened between Redwood Road and Maisie Road at around 2:50 p.m, in which it appears one woman involved likely lost control of her vehicle coming around a bend, then crossed the centre line into the path of an oncoming vehicle. Both drivers were trapped and had to be cut from the wreckage by emergency services. One of the women was transported to Nelson Hospital in a serious condition. 2 other women were transported to hospital by ambulance. A large blaze burnt to the ground the main building at a timber mill in Motueka around 6 p.m. on Tuesday night. The fire was well underway at Prime Pine Limited when fire crews arrived. Around 10 fire crews attended from across the Nelson region, and which promptly brought the blaze under control. Mainland's Gary Watson was at the scene and who spoke to some children who witnessed the fire.
We just saw smoke coming out of it. We were climbing on the roof just playing, and then we saw the fire. Yeah. And he went and told his mum, and I just started yelling out fire.
And who called the fire brigade?
Our mum. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But she wasn't first.
Okay.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. Hey, look, there's a guy over there.
A Nelson pub owner says he fully supports Hospitality New Zealand's position on the blood alcohol limit issue. In a statement, Hands says the government supports the current 0.8 limit, but only subject to the research currently being undertaken as to alcohol-related crashes and deaths for those driving at levels between 0.05 and 0.08. The government intends to review their position when the results of that study are available. Minister for Transport Jerry Brownlee has indicated that if it was lowered, he considered a penalty regime could be appropriate for those caught between 0.05 and 0.08. Mike Thomas of Smugglers Pub and Cafe says Hospitality New Zealand's position is to maintain the limit at 0.8 because the major problem is those well over the limit, not those between 0.5 and 0.8. Hans says those between these levels had for the most part already made good decisions about how much they've drunk and their ability to drive. Hospitality New Zealand also says significant police resources will be required to re-educate this group at the expense of targeting those well over the limit. Hospitality New Zealand is supporting the government undertaking the research into accidents amongst those with blood level alcohol between 0.05 and 0.08 so decisions can be made on the facts, not ideological rhetoric.